the number one way you respect the user is listen to them. Like, listen to the person that's using this technology. Listen to the person that's telling you the thing that gets me so excited about this technology is makes the journey more enjoyable. It's not the destination. When do you search for a video on YouTube versus Google search? There are a variety of inputs, a variety of ways. The key is just making the journey seamless for the person based on the context that they're coming in.
Hey, Jack, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Great to see you again. You know, I was looking back at when we first met, and it's starting to get to the point where I've started to know some of the folks in the tech industry for like a solid 10 years. And we're right about there. We met when you initially worked at Pandora, or we initially met when you worked at Pandora, then after you left WeWork. And I just took a look at how long you've been at Google for like 3 years at this point. I mean, man, time flies.
It does. Second journey at Google. I think I'm coming up on 7 cumulative years, and it's still a magical place to work.
What brought you back?
You know, when I left Google in 2011, I was on this journey of exploration of what might startup life be like. And I had the great fortune to have some amazing experiences like the one at Pandora that you mentioned, working on a company called United Masters. And the WeWork experience was quite amazing in many regards of that word.
There's been some good books about what went on there. So,
and you know, as I was exploring the various chapters of my career, I would say to my wife, "Oh, this next one's going to be my next Google. It's going to be my next Google." And she would look at me and say, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "I don't know, like a place where people value logic and reason over ego." And I'm very happy to report that, you know, from the first day that I stepped into Google 16 years ago to today, that cultural norm of respecting each other is still there every single day. And it continues to be a magical place to work.
It's cool. And it's interesting that you phrased it as like the next Google, because you're now working on what some see as the next Google, and that is Bard, right? So I'm kind of curious, just to begin with, you're working on this every day, and we're going to get into the product intricacies, of course, but you're working on this every day, and there's a range of thought between, you know, this is going to change the world, this type of generative AI, and especially chat is going to change the world, and there are others who say, well, you know, it might be a passing fad. Obviously, Google thinks it's more than that, given that you're working on it. The company doesn't typically take on projects that it believes are just going to be here today, gone tomorrow. But what's your view in terms of the transformative power of this technology?
I mean, I think we are still at the very early stages.
But okay, but your perspective on where it's going to go, like what is your, you know, obviously we don't know yet, but where do you, heart of hearts, think it's going?
Oh, when I look to the core of what's making this moment so magical is you're watching people take their imagination and let it blossom and flourish. And what inspires us working on Bard as this experiment that's a collaborator for your ideas, we watch people explore this journey of trying to discover something, taking an abstract idea and turning it into something that is more concrete, and it allows them to explore more ideas in less time to really supercharge their imagination. It's magical. Like, I spoke to a filmmaker in the early days of Bard, and it's funny to say the early days. We've been out for 2 months.
There it is again. I'm going to start ringing a bell.
Hey, there's still a lot to learn, and that's why we launched it as an experiment, because it's going to change frequently. But I speak to this filmmaker who says, I'm working on this short film for YouTube, and I'm trying to generate perspective of the other character. And I don't know of another tool that's existed before where it's like, hey, I'm not in my mid-50s going through a family transformation, but what are some things that people might explore as they're going through that life transition? And it's kind of fascinating to see this idea that people have in an exploration and trying to use a generative AI tool like Bard to help them build up that empathy for what that character might be going through.
Interesting. So I think that, like, when people think about the opportunity here, you know, the question is whether this is going to be something. I mean, that's a great use case that you gave, but I think people, when they think about a transformative product, right, the question is, can it enable humans to do things that they just couldn't do before in meaningful ways? And a lot of this stuff you could, for instance, like accomplish by thinking, or, the greats might have had it innately anyway, being able to empathize in that way. Or you might have been able to find these solutions by searching. So I'm curious, like, again, at the heart of this product, do you think this is just going to be sort of a cool new way to do things that we already did, or a brand new way to do things that we never could?
It's a fascinating way to put it, of like projecting where it's going to go is a very hard experience, because when you think of a new technology and a new capability, you don't know the directions that it's going to go. And I've studied a variety of history of technology development for a long time. Like take refrigeration, for example. We had ice boxes for a really long time, and then we created artificial ice boxes. We called them refrigerators. And at the time, it felt like it's a natural transition to go from an ice box to now I can plug this thing into a wall and it starts to refrigerate. Did anyone at that time that was trying to keep their food cold think it would enable couples struggling with fertility issues to have children? Like the enablement of IVF through the ability to extract eggs and freeze those eggs. Like, you don't know the compounding effects that technology will have. Part of what gets me excited about something like Bard is this idea of more ideas in less time. Like, our ability as humans to place meaning on things is profound, and it does compound. And so to have a tool that allows you to more seamlessly scratch that itch of your curiosity and see where it takes you, you're compressing the time. And when you compress that time, magical things can happen. And so, yes, I believe the opportunity is profound. I mean, we look at some of the things that AI has enabled. You look at Google in 2020, we announced AI's capability to do early detection of breast cancer, and we published it in Nature magazine. And these opportunities are just so profound. And what we're really rooted in is thinking through, how can you take that idea of being that filmmaker, exploring that, and you can create a film that you may have never created.
Right. Back in the day, by the way, when the refrigerator came out, if there was a Twitter, I'm sure you would have VCs doing threads about how that stuff would be good. No, I'm just kidding.
It's fun. No, but it's fun, yeah. Right? Like it's.
We're still allowed to imagine it. I think part of what I want to do over the course of our time together is sort of dream a little bit about where this could go.
Yeah, I think that's what's so exciting about this moment. The technology has been under development for many years, and again, compounding over neural models into transformers into where we are today. And we're now talking about multimodal models in the future, and the pace of change is remarkable. I mean, it's just absolutely remarkable. And part of the thing that makes this so fun is the ability to dream about what if and what could be.
Right. And I think like you made a good point about what announcements Google's made in 2020, looking at something like computer vision, but the big shift here has been the generative stuff. And of course, like, I don't think anyone's going to deny the fact that AI is going to be everywhere. It already is, right? But the path that the generative stuff is going to take is quite interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the innovator's dilemma, because the perception from the outside, at least, has been that Google's been stuck a little bit with an innovator's dilemma, which is that it has this great product, search, and these type of bots can threaten search a little bit. So I just want to read, there was a CNBC article that had some leaked comments from you at a Google All Hands that I think is like pretty interesting when it comes to like thinking about how this balances search and whatever else it might have. So you say to Google employees, Bard and ChatGPT are large language models, not knowledge models. They are great at generating human-sounding text. They are not good at ensuring their text is fact-based. Why do we think the first big application should be search, which at its heart is about finding true information? And then you say, I just want to be very clear, Bard is not search. And then you say, we can't stop users from trying to use it like search. And CNBC, contextualizing this, said that you mentioned that Google is still catering to people who want to use it for search. And you did build a search button inside the bot. You can Google things now. So I think that, and this is great. This is like awesome to be able to talk with you about, because like we can actually go a little bit deeper into these comments. From an outsider's perspective, the way that someone could read that is, well, why would it seems like a lot of effort to go through to talk about how this isn't search. And like kind of the only place that would happen is a company whose bread and butter is search, because otherwise people wouldn't really be worried about it. So I am kind of curious how you think about the balance between the two. And, there's obvious, reading through the lines, it does seem like there's some worry inside Google that this could displace search, at least in part. So what do you say to that?
I mean, I won't comment on meetings that we have internally, but what I can say of part of what you're scratching on is this question of what is Bard and why did you launch it as a standalone experiment? And that was a very intentional decision because of the known limitations of large language models, their ability to hallucinate, paired with a massive excitement and enthusiasm for their ability to be collaborative, for their ability to like sit down with a musician who's thinking about writing their next song and they're stuck on the chorus because they can't figure out that next line in the story that they're trying to tell, and they just need to bounce ideas off of something. This notion of being a collaborator is the root of what gets us excited of part of this experience. Now, as you collaborate, you do want to understand some topics more or less. And so, of course, people are going to ask questions about deeper understanding of a topic. And as you see, through using the product, there's a disclaimer, Bard may not get things right. It was a very intentional decision to put that Google It button there because we want to guide people down the path of knowing what's right. Hallucination is a challenge of this technology that remains unsolved. And we're certainly working toward improving it, getting it better every day. But we also want to acknowledge there are multiple tools for people on their knowledge journeys, and it's part of what inspires us at Google. I mean, you heard Sundar talk about it recently. We have 15 products with over 500 million users. We have 6 products with over 2 billion users. One of our core values is to respect the user and really listen and understand what they're looking for and what they need. And that's part of what you see in some of the design decisions that we made in the way that you see Bard manifest today.
Now, I'm kind of curious, the idea of not being able to stop people from using it for search. If there is this wide consumer behavior where people say, hey, I'd prefer to use these things, whether it's Bard or ChatGPT or Bing, to search versus the traditional search box, does Google kind of have to go along with them and enable that, even if it sort of falls into some of those worries that you're talking about? Because the other option effectively is just kind of sitting by the side and hoping the old way prevails.
One of the things that is amazing about this notion of respecting the user is you respect that they have multiple ways to get information. You look at YouTube, for example. YouTube is one of the largest search destinations in the world. And when do you search for a video on YouTube versus Google search? There are a variety of inputs, a variety of ways. The key is just making the journey seamless for the person based on the context that they're coming in. Recently, I was looking up what are the hours of a local business near me. And to be honest, I can't tell you when I use Google Maps to do that search and when I use Google Search, but it's about making it seamless. And so, again, we're 2 months into Bard. We're still learning how people want to use this technology. We're iterating on it. We announced a lot of the things that are coming out. We're launching images in responses because what we're finding is part of the benefit of launching direct access to a large language model rather than building a large language model into an existing service is you find these new ways that people are exploring and using it.
Interesting. So I actually, it is an experiment, which is true, but I'm also curious, what type of weight Google's putting behind it. Can you share anything to give us like a sense as to like the magnitude of this project inside Google? Maybe how many people are working on it or anything of that nature?
I won't comment on the size of the team, but I will comment on the energy of the team, which is honestly, man, it's infectious. I come into work every single day. I drive 90 minutes to get to the office,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Are you
listen.
still in the East Bay?
I'm in the North Bay,
Okay.
and it's a great
Mhm.
time to listen to the Big Technology podcast while you're
I
on that.
love that.
Hey,
Thank you.
got to get that plug. No, but it's like I am excited to wake up every single day, well, 3 days a week, and make that drive
Mhm.
into the office and see the collaborative energy that's coming off. Like you're standing next to a whiteboard, you're watching people build and riff and grow on these ideas and learn. Like we're at this pace right now working on this product where, yes, we're very enthusiastic, and hopefully you see it through our experiment updates at the pace at which we're able to generate these new features that are coming out, these new experiences in Bard. But it's really about the speed of insight that this cadence is doing. And that's the thing that's infectious. Like going back to that Google value of respect the user, the number one way you respect the user is listen to them. Like listen to the person that's using this technology. Listen to the person that's telling you the thing that gets me so excited about this technology is it makes the journey more enjoyable. It's not the destination. I think like one of the things that we saw when the emergence of this generative technology came out, I would hear things like, oh, this thing's amazing. It's going to make this travel itinerary for me. And like, bing, bam, boom, like 2 minutes, I've got my trip to the Jersey Shore planned.
Until you go somewhere that it's hallucinated.
No, it's well, certainly hallucination is a problem that we continue to work on. But like you listen to how people are using it and what inspires them about building a travel itinerary. It's that I'm sitting in a room that's maybe with some drab lighting, and it's raining, and it's 40 degrees outside in March, and I'm dreaming of where I am going to be at the beach. You want to make that journey fun for people, and you want them to start thinking about the lateral capabilities of bringing these things. Like one of the things that we don't necessarily have a tool for is like, I was talking to my 4-year-old the other day about the places that he wants to go, and Ratatouille is one of his favorite movies. And he goes, Dad, I want to do a Ratatouille trip. And I was like, what does that even mean? And so I started playing with Bard of like, what would a Ratatouille trip look like well, the movie takes place in Paris. I would love to go to Paris, but I'm terrified of the 9-hour time change for my 4-year-old. But you start to explore these new ways of reconfiguring information in a way that didn't exist before. And so we've spent so many years making knowledge retrieval more efficient, and people know how to use that. And getting back to what's exciting about this technology, we're building upon knowledge retrieval and now focusing on knowledge creation. Like, how can you start to get these ideas? Like, I don't know how many people have ever searched for build a Ratatouille itinerary for 4-year-olds.
Okay, I know that this is like an exciting thing. I just want to get back to the we could go on for this forever. I definitely want to like look at the product stuff, but I definitely want to get back to this magnitude question. So I know maybe you won't share the size of the audience, but can you talk about like, is this a project that Sundar is involved in?
I think you see the amount of energy that we talk about. I mean, anything you see on the I/O stage is something that all of Google is excited about. And there are plenty of things that were not on the I/O stage that Google is very excited about as well. And so, of course, there's involvement from across the company of seeing the excitement of what we're building. And I'm really thankful to have partners across the company that are willing to share their ideas. Hey, have you explored this? Have you considered that? We'll soon be launching tool use. We announced extensions at I/O. There's going to be Google tools and services that are built directly into Bard. And so it's a collaborative effort across the company.
Yeah, one of the things I've listened to in a recent interview with Sundar is that he said, this is the most exciting thing Sergey has ever worked on in his life. Has he been involved in the creation?
Again, going back to like the first go at Google, I had the pleasure of seeing the founders involved in the creation of products at the company. And Sundar said, Sergey, Larry have been involved in the various discussions of product development for years. And so to have them continue to be involved in Google, they sit on our board. Of course, they have a vested interest in all the bets that Google's making to be successful.
Oh, that's pretty cool. What's it been like working with them?
I had this amazing experience my first time working at Google that like kind of touches upon the curiosity that like builds into some of the magic of the culture of the company. And it gets to the breast cancer detection story that I was telling you, where we announced that in 2020 and continue to build through that in Google Health. I happened to catch Larry at a team offsite where he's exploring these ideas, and I happened to catch him. I was like, "Hey, what's on your mind?" And he's like, "Well, I was thinking about like you could detect cancer early in people, for less than $5. Like, cells grow and divide symmetrically throughout the body, but cancer cells grow asymmetrically. And so if you built precise enough weights that Now, obviously that was not the solution that we use for cancer detection, but this like thread of curiosity has been at the center of the culture of the company, and like part of what I find magical. And working on Bard today, that culture still exists. All of my colleagues have this idea of pulling a thread like we did. So a few weeks ago, we launched the ability to have Bard code, and you start pulling on that thread. Like, cool, Bard can write code, generate code. People love using it for like breaking down regular expressions and even writing like Google Sheets formulas. So it's not just like for every software developer. But as we start doing that, we started seeing things like on some math related questions, which again is an area that large language models need to improve. It started to respond to some queries by writing a Python script of how it might solve that problem. And so you just start like tugging on that thread, and you're like, wait, code is a language. English is a language. These things are built off of technology that translates one language from another. Like, where can this go? And that insight is part of what generates this notion of, hey, tool use seems really, really interesting and really capable. There's obviously a ton of other considerations you have to include there, like give users control, make it very clear what's taking place. And so it's not purely a large language model problem to do that. But like that curiosity, I mean, it's just amazing to see it every single day.
Yeah, from the founders as well.
From everybody. I mean, it's all over the company.
I got you. I'm kind of curious, this has been interesting because it's happened so fast. Google sort of became famous for being the company that really got this first, when it's kind of interesting what makes you famous. But when Blake Lemoine, a software engineer at Google, said he thought this large language model that you guys have, Lambda, was a person, that sort of like, really caught a lot of people's attention. I spoke with him, and the thing that I really came away from that conversation was all right, sentient or not, dang, these models are extremely impressive. Like their ability to hold a conversation, it was unlike any chatbot I'd ever seen before. I'm kind of curious, like how you felt internally when you. I mean, is that something that brought your attention, large language models, and what did you feel internally what did you feel when he made that statement?
I mean, I think the question of AI sentience is something that's broadly discussed, and
yeah,
frankly,
I don't think we're going to get to the bottom of it today.
I don't think we're going to get to the bottom of it. But one of the, so first, flat out, like, no, these things are not sentient beings, but it touches on the importance of the conversation that we need to have in rolling out this technology. Why did we take this foray by making Bard a standalone experiment? Because for the people that are interested in the technology and wanting to try it, we want to give them a destination to directly engage with the technology and try to understand it, because that conversation is how you drive this term that's used across the industry of alignment. How do you make sure that the technology that you're building is responsibly aligning with human values, the things that we expect from this technology? And one of the things that you learn is you get these very, loquacious, convincing large text responses is they are convincing. And so you have to go through the design process of, yes, like we as humans, again, like we talk about unlocking people's imagination. Like imagination is a very powerful tool, and people place meaning into things that may not necessarily be there. One of my favorite concepts is this notion of pareidolia. You ever look at a cloud and, see a pig in there? There's not a pig in there, but yeah, actually there's not a cloud in the sky today in California. But it's one of these things where that is a human phenomenon. Like our ability to see faces in things is a human phenomenon that's existed for years. And as we roll out this technology, again, maybe you can do like one of those ding counters, like, but just a reminder, like we're at the early stages of a very long arc of technology. And so we need to engage in these discussions. We need to figure out, how do you build technology that's both bold and responsible? And the bold part is give people access to the capabilities, get them to engage in it, listen to that feedback and iterate quickly. And we want that to be a dialogue. And so with a product like Bard, you see something that we launched called experiment updates. And so when we update Bard, we not only tell you what's changed, we're also telling you why we changed it. And we had this hypothesis when we released the what and why, that people would engage in the conversation they have. But one of the things that it's helped us see is, hey, this is part of that path into helping us understand why you might take the next step. Like, why are you launching images? Well, we're launching images because people love the journey of creation. And so we have that capability, and we should include it.
Yeah. And so if going out there and having this dialogue and working with users is so important for alignment, I'm kind of curious why you think that the first company that came out with a large language model available to the public was OpenAI and not Google. If that was always a value inside Google to get it out into testing, then why did Bard come after some of these others?
We've been testing Lambda inside of Google dating back to when Sundar announced it on stage at I/O a few years ago. It's been a tool that we've had inside the company, and part of what you see is the discourse that happens inside of the company. That's magical. Engaging in this conversation. Are people ready to talk to a thing that sounds convincing in response? And so we have been iterating for a long time. And what you've seen over the past few months is this signal from the broader populace that we're excited to try this thing. Like, yes, it has its limitations. Yes, it has angles for responsibility that we need to deliver. But like the signal was there, like going back to our core value of respect the user. People were saying we're ready to try this out knowing its limitations. And so we rolled it out in a way that hopefully people see we're very clear about the limitations that are known, but the improvement that's happening alongside it as well.
Yeah. I have this feeling that, I think, I'm kind of curious how you think Bard stacks up with the competitors. But I think that it's behind, but I also have this feeling that Google has a way of just rapidly innovating, and we could see you guys catch up and exceed the others pretty quickly. And frankly, like, it's cool in some ways to have this competition, because as a user, like, I love using these things. And if I could have, for instance, like, I remember like one of my early interactions with Bing was trying to get it to like search my inbox for things or send emails. And I was like, I'll give you my Gmail login and password, just do it. And it wouldn't do it. And like, wow, like if Google could actually get good at that, it would be really a compelling use case to use Bard. So I am kind of curious, like, where you think the effort stacks right now, and and whether you feel like that theory is somewhat accurate.
Well, I've been very pleased to see the response that we've been getting with every new iteration that we have of Bard. And one of the things that people had asked when we launched it, that use case that you mentioned, is one that is very commonly asked for. And the question then became like, can you do it in a way that responsibly meets users' needs? And we didn't launch with it for the same reason why we didn't open up Bard in its initial waitlist phase supporting code, because we didn't feel like it could give helpful enough answers. But then again, you listen to what people are asking for, you see the improvements in helpfulness, you get that insight like, oh, as it does this, it can start to understand how to use tools. And so we start asking the question, like, could it use Google tools? And that's why you heard us announce a few weeks ago now on the I/O stage, 2 weeks ago, that tool use is coming to Bard. And we see this as this progression. And what I get excited about is people want rapid iteration. They want to try out new capabilities, and they want to find both utility and appreciate the fun aspect of using these things like that. I want to make sure that doesn't get lost in the discourse. Like, these things are fun to use.
No doubt. Google's a verb. Is there a risk of moving too slow and having like ChatGPT or Bing become a verb?
We talk about being bold and responsible. And so being responsible means you have to understand and appreciate what are the risks of taking a product to market. And one of the things that we are really building into the bold steps that we're making as we release images, as we bring tool use to the fold, is that you have to do all these things with the user's trust in mind. And so tool use, why are we not launching it today? We're still working through the exact tuning of, hey, what are the right ways to bring these tools to people where they feel like they are in control, because that is a core principle from which we're building. And it's not that far away, but we want to make sure that when we bring something to people, that it meets with both their expectations of the good and the expectations of what's actually happening.
Jack Krawczyk is here. He's the Senior Director of Bard at Google. We've talked a lot about the competitive stuff and the strategic stuff in the first half. In the second half, we'll dream. And we're back here on Big Technology Podcast with Jack Krawczyk. He's the Senior Director of Bard. And Jack, I think we should dream a little bit. What do you think?
I'll dream a little dream.
Okay, so I'm curious. I want to think about where this product can go. And okay, let's start with the model, right? For a long time, people have talked about narrow AI. AI can sense images, or it can speak in natural language. It can understand natural language. You have a language model, large language model, right? Right there in the name. The thing that's on the cutting edge right now are these multimodal models that people say are capable of like doing things like understanding language and producing images. And I just heard about it recently when Brain and DeepMind merged at Google and mentioned multimodal models in the announcement. So can you share your perspective on what these models are and where they might be going? And it seems like maybe that brings us closer to a general AI than we had been in the past.
In the piece of modality that is exciting is the mixture of going beyond text, and right now we're launching images in Bard, and so you see images.
Is it powered by the same model, or is it a different model that handles that?
So the model is incorporating images in this round here that are available through image search. Over time, we're going to bring in image generation, as we announced through our partnership with Adobe Firefly, that we're very excited about. And so
but
that's
those
about
models
the output.
Aren't multimodal though. Those are like two different models. I'm curious about the multimodal stuff. I guess it's more research based now.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to how we're trying to understand getting this technology in people's hands, so that they're giving us the feedback. But input is another area where we announced lens integration. Snap a photo of something and then engage with that photo through text. And so where you start getting these transformations becomes really interesting and trying to understand, it's one of those rainy days. And again, 2 kids, we've got a craft drawer, take a photo of it, see what I can do with that. Like, that is a way to be helpful. But then going back into the compounding effects, like, we need to listen of how people are going to use these things. And so I think it's fun to dream. I think it's fun to prognosticate of where it could go. But we need to get this technology in people's hands, watching how they're using it, generating these insights like, hey, this technology is really amazing to assist me in my journey and make me enjoy my journey a little bit more. That's a really great insight to continue to build and grow upon.
Okay. So it sounds like models that can handle a bunch of different functions aren't quite there yet. Go ahead. Do you have any thoughts on those models, or?
I don't. I mean, I think all of these models are not there yet, right? Like they're clearly unlocking this desire to dream. What could be? What could happen if you had, like if you remember the movie Jerry Maguire? He's an agent that just respects Rod Tidwell, his client. He'll do anything for him. He tries to understand him. This notion of getting to a world where you have an agent that can anticipate your needs, deliver for you, be that extra set of eyes and ears when you're not in the room, that's a magnificent capability. That again, like you get back to that compounding, like are we working toward that? I think when people talk about AGI, it comes in various forms, but wouldn't that be like, that would be amazing, but you can't just launch it tomorrow. You have to build, you have to compound. Like we talked about the previous examples in refrigeration, right? Like you probably wouldn't have had a refrigerator before understanding the need for insulation of an icebox. And so that's what we're building now.
I know, but I'm just saying that Google's talking about multimodal models in its announcements. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
but,
and
all right, I think
you'll
we should
see
just,
them as they're ready. They'll be brought across our suite.
So one of the questions that I got from someone as I started to do the research for this was kind of an interesting thought that maybe one day Bard could just be across all of Google's products. Like, could you see that happening? For instance, having a Bard within Sheets, helping you, figure out what's going on with your data, or in Gmail or places like that. Are we going to see Bard as a brand everywhere?
So again, we're in the early stages of answering these questions. As you saw us announce at I/O, in our workspace tools, we're going to be bringing the Sidekick AI experience in there, helping you write in Gmail, helping you write in Docs. And so as we bring generative AI capabilities to more products across Google, we're taking the lessons that we learn from Bard, trying to apply them across the fleet of products at Google, taking the learning that we have from integrating a generative AI in the fleet and bringing it back to Bard. And I'm not going to speculate of exactly the direction that product brands are going to take, but again, it just gets back into that will be answered by the speed of insight that's generated through delivering these experiences to people.
So one thing that I have been also thinking about is when I first started reporting on chatbots, when they were hot, like in 2015, 2016, when Facebook wanted to make the Messenger platform, there was an idea that you could have one central bot that could handle all your different apps. People only use 5 apps on their phone, right? There are others they don't really use, and they have sometimes dozens, scores, hundreds of apps on their phones. So the idea that all these apps could go through a single chatbot that knows your name, that knows your credit card information, that knows your preferences, that knows where you are, is actually quite appealing if they can work with its services. So, I mean, you mentioned a little bit talking about tools and these extensions that are going to go through Bard. How important is that in the vision, and where do you think that could go?
We have to understand how to continue to maintain a rich ecosystem of all of the partners that are involved. So obviously you respect the user and you follow them and build for that, but you have to make sure that the needs are being met of a variety of these tool partners. And in the same way we're talking about alignment with the technology and people using it, the ecosystem is having that conversation as well. And it's one that's, again, still in the nascent stages. It's early. And why do you release Bard as an experiment? Because you invite the conversation. You see how can you get the benefits of what's good for people. Like I want to look for, you know, a new restaurant reservation near me for 10 people that has kids. That's an interesting interface. It's exciting to see, some of the work that a partner like OpenTable is doing there. And so you have to learn. You have to make sure that it's valuable for everyone.
That's interesting. I mean, like OpenTable is like a great example. Like it does. So that's, I guess you're probably still just an experimental stage here in terms of how these apps can go through. But
again, it's speed of insight. Like speed of insight is really the important. It's the important piece.
what do you think happens to the web with all this generative AI stuff? I mean, it's not your domain, but there was this demo for generative AI search. That was pretty interesting. But and again, you can read a lot of it within the chatbot or within the search window, and the need to go to the website is kind of minimized.
Core principle of what's driven Google for many years is that a rich and healthy ecosystem is critical. I mean, it is one of our core values of respecting the opportunity. You have to respect your partners, and we're inviting the conversations with our partners of how does this evolve in a way that it is beneficial. And so again, ding counter, it's the early stage of a long arc of technology. We're still figuring these things out, but you can't answer these questions in a vacuum. You can't answer these questions without saying, here's how people are wanting to use these technologies like Bard. And that's how you have this approach to being both bold, give the technology to people to use and tell you how it's helpful, how it's not helpful, and be responsible. What are the ways to ensure that you're enabling this ecosystem that has been the root of our values for 25 years.
Awesome. Jack, thanks so much for coming on. Great chatting with you.
It was great chatting with you, Alex. Good to see you.
You too.